The top 10 ways people get in their own way. Many people possess blind spots when it comes to knowing about themselves. Sometimes the blind spots apply to strengths, but more often people fail to see their weaknesses, and that causes trouble. If you don't know you have a problem, then you can't work to fix it. In the next several pages, I'd like to acquaint you with what I have observed to be the top 10 reasons people fail. As you read, please be open-minded and try to see yourself and your shortcomings in the following descriptions. Become aware of recurring issues in your life. As you read, you may find your Achilles heel. By the way, the Achilles of ancient Greek myth was a warrior who was totally indestructible, except in one tiny spot on his heel, and that one flaw allowed for his complete destruction. Except that he knew how his many flaws worked. So don't mentally minimize the amount of damage that a weakness may create. Number 1, poor people skills. By far the greatest single obstacle to success that I see in others is a poor understanding of people. A while back in the Wall Street Journal, printed an article on the reasons that executives fail. At the top of the list was a person's inability to effectively relate with others. I was talking to some people a couple days ago, and they were complaining about not winning a business contract that they had bid on. It wasn't fair, one person told me. All the people involved knew each other, and we didn't have a chance. It's all politics. But what he went on to describe wasn't politics. It was relationships. Authors Carol Hyatt and Linda Gottlieb indicate that people who fail on the job commonly cite office politics as the reason for their failures. But the reality is that what they call politics is often nothing more than regular interaction with other people. Hyatt and Gottlieb observed, most careers involve other people. You can have great academic intelligence and still lack social intelligence. The ability to be a good listener, to be sensitive towards others, to give and to take criticism well. If you don't like you and people don't like you, you help fail. On the other hand, if you can get away with serious mistakes, if you are socially intelligent, the mistake may actually further your career if the boss thinks you handled the situation in a mature and responsible way. How are you when it comes to working with people? Are you genuine and authentic? Or do you continually put up a front? Do you listen carefully to others? Or do you do most of the talking? Do you expect everyone else to conform to your wishes, your schedule, and your agenda? Or do you look for ways to meet people on their terms? If you haven't learned how to get along with other people, you will always be fighting a battle to succeed. However, making people skills a strength will take you farther than any other skill you develop. People like to do business with people they like. Or, to put it the way President Theodore Roosevelt did, the most important single ingredient in the formula of success is knowing how to get along with people. Number 2, a negative attitude. I saw a cartoon that depicted a man getting his palm read by a fortune teller. As she steadied the man's palm, she said, "You will be sad, miserable, and poor until you're 30. "Gee," the man replied hopefully, "what happens when I'm 30? The fortune teller replied, "Then you'll get used to it." Your reaction to the circumstances of your life has everything to do with your well-being and your success. W. Clement Stone tells a story about a young bride who traveled with her husband to the California desert during World War II. Because she had grown up in the East, the desert seemed remote and desolate to her. Where they lived didn't make it any easier. The only housing they could find was a shack near a village of Native Americans, none of whom spoke English. She spent a lot of time there, waiting out the sweltering heat each day. When her husband was gone for a long period, she wrote her mother to say she was returning home. A few days later, she received this reply. Two men looked from prison bars. One saw mud, the other saw stars. The words helped the young woman to see things more clearly. Maybe she could not improve her circumstances, but she could improve herself. She's made friends with her Native American neighbors. She began working with them on weaving and pottery. And she took time to explore the desert and discover its natural beauty. All of a sudden, she was living in a new world, and the only thing that changed was her attitude. If your circumstances constantly get you down, then maybe it's time for a change. Not in your situation, but in your attitude. If you can learn to make the best of any situation, you can remove a formidable obstacle that stands between you and your dreams. Number 3, a bad fit. Though we should always first examine our attitudes when we don't enjoy our circumstances, sometimes a change in situation is also in order. Sometimes a case of mixed-matched abilities, interests, personality, or values can be a major contributor to chronic failure. The most important single ingredient in the formula of success is knowing how to get along with other people. Theodore Roosevelt. A good example can be seen in the life of film producer David Brown. He started out in corporate America and was fired from 3 different jobs before he realized that corporate life was not for him. After working his way up in Hollywood and becoming number 2 man at 20th Century Fox, he was fired after recommending a film that turned out to be a major flop. Then he became an editorial vice president at the New American Library. But he was fired when he clashed with a coworker. Later, he was rehired by 20th Century Fox, but 6 years later was fired again, along with Fox's president, Richard Zanuck. Brown examined his working behavior and determined that his outspoken, risk-oriented ways did not fit well in the settings where he had been working. He was too much of an entrepreneur to work in jobs with confining expectations. Although he had failed as a corporate executive, he was extremely successful when he pursued his own ideas with former boss Zanuck. He and Zanuck went on to produce many popular films, including the box office hit Jaws. Few things in life are more frustrating than being stuck in a profession or organization that does not suit you. It's like always having to wear shoes that are two sizes too large or too small. Are you a salesperson stuck in an accountant's job? Are you a corporate executive who would rather be at home raising your children? Are you an engineer who would rather be pastoring a church? Are you an entrepreneur working for an organization whose idea of progress is moving backward slowly? Evaluate yourself and your situation. If there is a poor fit, think about making a change. Number 4, lack of focus. Bad things happen when a person doesn't focus. Let me illustrate with one story. A businessman visited a small florist shop in order to buy flowers for a friend who was opening a new business. The floral shop owner was unusually busy and was scrambling to fill orders while she took the businessman information. Later that day, the man arrived at his friend's grand opening and saw a big floral wreath with his name on it that said, "With deepest sympathy during this time of sorrow." The businessman was irate. He called the florist to complain and asked, "What in the world happened? Do you have any idea how stupid you made me look?" "I'm so sorry," the shop owner said. "I was a little scrambled when you came by, but your situation wasn't nearly as bad as it was at the funeral home. That card said, 'Best wishes in your new location.'" Anyone can make an honest mistake when things are getting hectic, but people lacking focus have trouble, not because they're too busy, but because their priorities are out of whack. And that wastes time and resources. If you go from task to task to task without making any progress, or you can't seem to reach a goal no matter how much effort you give it, examine your focus. No one can move forward without it. 5. A weak commitment. For a long time, it seemed that apathy was chic, but effort and commitment seem to be coming back into style. And that's good, because without commitment, you cannot accomplish anything of value. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe addressed the importance of commitment. Until one is committed, there is hesitance, the chance to draw back, and always ineffectiveness. The moment one definitely commits oneself, a whole stream of events issue from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and material assistance which no man could have dreamed would come his way. The last time you failed, did you stop trying because you failed? Or did you fail because you stopped trying? What was your level of commitment? Did you give the task everything you had? Did you go the extra mile? Did you put enough of yourself on the line to guarantee that you would give your very best? If you are committed, a failure doesn't mean that you'll never succeed. It just means you will take longer. Commitment makes you capable of failing forward until you reach your goals. 6. An unwillingness to change. Perhaps the most relentless enemy of achievement, personal growth, and success is inflexibility. Some people seem to be so in love with the past that they can't deal with the present. Not long ago, a friend sent me The top 10 strategies for dealing with a dead horse. I thought the list was hilarious. 1. Buy a stronger whip. 2. Change riders. 3. Appoint a committee to steady the horse. 4. Appoint a team to revive the horse. 5. Send out a memo declaring the horse isn't really dead. 6. Hire an expensive consultant to find the real problem. 7. Harness several dead horses together for increased speed and efficiency. 8. Rewrite the standard definition of live horse. 9. Declare the horse to be better, faster, and cheaper when dead. 10. Promote the dead horse to a supervisory position. I bet you've seen just about every one of these solutions enacted in your place of work. But there's really only one effective way to deal with that problem. When your horse is dead, for goodness sakes, dismount. One Calvin and Hobbes comic strip portrayed the way that too many of us perceive change. Calvin and his stuffed tiger friend were speeding down the hill in the boy's wagon. Calvin yelled to Hobbes, "I thrive on change." Surprised, Hobbes remarked, You threw a fit this morning because your mom put less jelly on your toast than yesterday." Calvin faced Hobbes and explained, "I thrive on making other people change." You don't have to love change to be successful, but you need to be willing to accept it. Change is a catalyst for personal growth. It gets you out of a rut. It gives you a fresh start, and it affords you the opportunity to reevaluate your direction. If you resist change, you're really resisting success. Learn flexibility or learn to like living with failure. The common denominator of a success lies in forming the habit of doing things that failures don't like to do. Albert Gray. 7. A shortcut mindset. A common obstacle to success is the desire to cut corners and take the short road to success. But shortcuts never pay off in the long run. As Napoleon said, victory belongs to the most persevering. Most people try to underestimate the time it takes to achieve something of value. But to be successful, you have to be willing to pay your dues. James Watt spent 20 years laboring to build his perfect steam engine. William Harvey labored night and day for 8 years to prove how blood circulated in the human body. And it took another 25 years for the medical profession to acknowledge he was right. Cutting corners is a sign of impatience and poor self-discipline. But if you're willing to follow through, you can achieve a breakthrough. That's why Albert Gray says, the common denominator of success lies in forming the habit of doing the things that failures don't like to do. If you continually give in to your moods or impulses, then you need to change your approach to doing things. The best method is to set standards for yourself that require accountability. Suffering a consequence for not following through helps you to stay on track. Once you have your new standards in place, work according to them, not your moods. That will get you going in the right direction. Self-discipline is a quality that is truly won through patience. Psychologist Joseph Mancusi noted, truly successful people have learned to do what does not come naturally. Real success lies in experiencing fear or aversion and acting in spite of it. 8. Relying on talent alone. Talent is overrated, not because it doesn't have value, but because talent alone isn't enough to take a person through the multiple failures that life brings. Adding a strong work ethic to talent is like pouring gasoline on a fire. It's explosive. The great artists understand this, though some non-artists mistakenly believe that talent alone carries them through. David Bales and Ted Orland explain, even at best, talent remains a constant, and those who rely upon that gift alone, without developing further, peak quickly and soon fade to obscurity. Examples of genius only accentuate the truth. Newspapers love to print stories about 5-year-old musical prodigies giving solo recitals, but you rarely read about one going on to be a Mozart. The point here is whatever the initial gift, Mozart was also an artist who learned to work on his work and thereby improved. In that respect, he shares common ground with the rest of us. The greater your talent, the more likely you are to lean heavily on it and skip the hard day-to-day work of improving it. If you possess this negative tendency, put yourself on a growth path so that you can make the most of your God-given talent. 9. A response to poor information. Successful executives have the common ability to make weighty decisions based on limited amounts of information, but they also have the common ability to gather reliable information to use as they evaluate issues. General Douglas MacArthur knew this. He asserted, expect only 5% of an intelligence report to be accurate. The trick of a good commander is to isolate the 5%. As the pace of life and business increases, the difficulty of being able to collect and evaluate information will increase. In fact, Bill Gates' best-selling book, Business at the Speed of Thought, was written specifically to address this issue. An example of what can go wrong when decisions are made on the basis of poor information is evident on the purchase of Rolls-Royce motor cars. Volkswagen and BMW battled each other to purchase Rolls-Royce from Vickers plc, and Volkswagen won the battle, paying $780 million for luxury automaking company. But after the purchase was finalized, the buyers made a shocking discovery. Volkswagen owned the company, but not the rights to the name Rolls-Royce, which is synonymous with luxury cars around the world. The license for the name, it turned out, belonged to another company, Rolls-Royce plc, an aerospace company. Even worse, Rolls-Royce plc had ties to BMW. Guess who received permission to use the name? BMW, not Volkswagen. And it all happened because of poor information gathering. 10. No goals. The last major cause of failure is an absence of goals. Don Marquis perceives that ours is a world where people don't know what they want and are willing to go through hell to get it. Joel Griffith believes A goal is nothing more than a dream with a time limit. People don't have goals because they haven't allowed themselves to dream. As a result, they don't possess a desire. If that describes you, then you must look deep inside yourself and try to determine why you're on this planet. Once you've discovered that, you'll know what to shoot for. I'll talk more about this in the next chapter. If you can discover the weakness that weakens you, then you can start to change your life. I've seen it happen again and again, and people who desire success. Let me tell you about one of them. Ours is a world where people don't know what they want and are willing to go through hell to get it. Putting purpose before people. One of the people I rely on most at the Enjoy group is my good friend Dan Reland. He and I have worked together for 17 years. For more than a decade, Dan was my right hand at Skyline Church, serving as my executive pastor. I couldn't have succeeded without him. When I resigned from the pastorate to lead the Enjoy group full time, I took him with me. Today, he serves as Enjoy's Vice President of Leadership Development and Church Growth. To say that Dan is naturally purpose-driven would be an understatement. He is highly organized, and he goes after a goal with a vengeance. When I first met him, if he had dropped his briefcase and it had broken open, the contents would have fallen out in alphabetical order. But as is the case with many people, Dan's strength was also his weakness. Let's just say that because he was purpose-driven, he was not the most relational guy in the world. Going right past his work. Initially, Dan held the position of intern. I remember one day soon after he started the job. I was standing in the office lobby having a conversation with a group of people, and Dan came in from the parking lot with his carefully arranged briefcase. He walked right down through the group of us and didn't say a word. He strode down the hall directly to his office. I excused myself from the group, and I followed him. Dan set his briefcase down on his desk, and when he turned around, he was surprised to see that I was standing there. Dan, I said, what are you doing? You walked right by us and you didn't say anything. Well, I have a lot of work to do, Dan answered, pulling out a stack of papers. Dan, I said, looking him in the eye, you just passed your work. I wanted him to understand that people come first to a leader. Making changes. For the next year, Dan and I worked together, and I mentored him in the area of people skills. Dan worked especially hard. He was dedicated to improving himself, and he got even better. Today, if you were to meet Dan, you would think that his ability to work with people is a natural strength, because he is so good at it. He is now one of the finest pastoral leaders in the country. And if I have a tricky assignment that requires someone with exceptional people skills to carry it out, do you know who is on my short list of choices? Dan. And that has become possible because of his willingness to grow and change. He has taken a weakness and turned it into a strength. If you are dedicated to overcoming failure and achieving lasting success, then you need to be willing to do the same. Work on the weakness that weakens you, and there's no telling how far you will go. Your 13th step to failing forward. Work on the weakness that weakens you. Everybody has weaknesses. Review the top 10 reasons people fail and determine whether you need to work on one of these areas. Or you may have a different issue that isn't listed there. Start improving yourself by talking to a trusted friend. Ask him to help you evaluate yourself in your area of weakness. Then, put yourself on a growth plan to turn that weakness into a strength. The plan may include reading books, attending classes or seminars, or finding a mentor. Determine to put your plan into action and stick with it for a year. At the end of that time, go back to the friend who helped you evaluate yourself and ask the person to evaluate your progress. If you still need improvement, begin a second phase of growth, following it as long as you must to keep growing. Steps to failing forward. 1. Recognize that there is one major difference between average people and achieving people. 2. Learn a new definition of failure. 3. Remove the you from failure. 4. Take action and reduce your fear. 5. Don't let the failure from outside of you get inside of you. 7. Say goodbye to yesterday. 8. Change yourself and the world changes. 9. Get over yourself and start giving of yourself. 10. Find the benefit in every bad experience. 11. If at first you do succeed, try something harder. 12. Learn from a bad experience and make it a good experience. 13. Work on the weaknesses that weakens you. Break. Are you looking for an amazing adventure? Well, visit www.stormnavigator.biz and take on the adventure of a lifetime, storm chasing tours in the United States. Again, www.stormnavigator.biz. It's for the bold. End break. 14. The little difference between failure and success makes a big difference. There is no failure except no longer trying. There is no defeat except from within. No really insurmountable barrier save our own inherent weakness of purpose. Ken Hubbard. Most unsuccessful people believe that a huge gaping chasm stands between them and success. They suspect deep down that they will never be able to cross that void and get to the other side in achieving their dreams. But I want to let you in on a little secret. There's not much difference between failure and success, and a little difference makes a big difference. What creates that difference? Let me share a story with you, and you will be able to guess what the difference maker is. The start of an uphill battle. I think everyone in the United States has heard of Macy's department store, thanks to its famous Thanksgiving Day parade and the movie Miracle on 34th Street. But fewer people know about the man who founded the store in 1858. His name was R.H. Macy. The son of a sea captain, Macy was born at Nantucket at a time when whaling was king. His first job was on a whaling ship. He spent 4 years on that ship and saw the world, traveling as far as New Zealand. When he returned to the United States with his share of the ship's earnings, which amounted to $500, he was finished with the sea. He worked several odd jobs and then took a position as an apprentice in a printing shop. He lasted only 6 months there. He had greater ambitions than the printing trade had to offer. A venture into retail. That's when he decided to try his hand at retail trade. With the money he'd saved from his time at sea, he opened a small thread and needle store in Boston. His hopes were high. His work ethic was strong. But the business failed within a year. The next year, Macy tried again. His second store traded in dry goods, mainly European items bought at auction. Again, he worked hard, and again, he failed. The following year, he decided to team with his brother-in-law, Samuel S. Houghton, who eventually founded Houghton and Dutton in Boston. He worked with him and learned a lot, but after a year, he decided he needed a change. Go west, young man. R.H. Macy and his brother Charles had heard about the gold strike in California, and they decided to head west and try their hands at mining. Though they failed to strike it rich, they immediately recognized that there were opportunities to make money selling goods to the miners. Along with 2 other partners, they opened Macy and Company in Marysville, a town north of Sacramento, and they did fairly well until the gold run out and the miners left the area. So they sold the business to a competitor and moved back east. Macy's next venture was a dry goods store in Haverhill, Massachusetts, a town north of Boston. He had learned something from each business he had run, and he was starting to formulate a unique philosophy of trade. At his newest store, Macy introduced innovations that would later become his trademark, selling at a fixed price, while other stores haggled, buying and selling for cash only, and advertising heavily. He even wrote his own copy and designed the layout for each ad, drawing on his time in the printing business. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it in the business either, so he closed the doors. He wasn't defeated, though. The following year, he opened another store and sold the goods for the lowest prices in town. Yet, despite his innovations, his clever advertising, and his hard work, the business didn't make it. After 3 years of struggle in a relatively small town, Macy sold out and declared bankruptcy, making a change. At that point, Macy's decided to get out of retail. For a while, he worked as a stockbroker, then a real estate broker. He moved to Wisconsin to pursue an opportunity, but financial panic dashed his hopes of making it really big. Despite the difficult times, he achieved modest success, and he was able to make some money. With Macy's big opportunity in Wisconsin having fallen through, a friend convinced him to give the retail trade another try. Once again, he returned to the West. He had tried 5 professions: whaler, retailer, gold miner, stockbroker, and real estate broker. And this would be his 7th attempt in retail. He must have been weary, yet he was only 35 years old. He decided to try his luck in Manhattan, and that was to make a tremendous difference. Even then, New York was the largest city in the United States, and with a population of 950,000, It was 100 times larger than the Haverhill area. And New York was still growing. In 1858, R. H. Macy opened a fancy dry goods store. After only 12 months, he was grossing $80,000 per year. By the 1870s, the store averaged more than $1 million in sales per year. The father of retail as we know it. As Macy's business grew, he revolutionized retail trade. He can be credited with numerous innovations, inventing the concept of the modern department store, making set prices the norm in the industry instead of haggling, buying and selling in high volume in order to provide lower prices for customers, introducing modern retail advertising, appointing the first female executive in retail history. In 1877, Macy died while on a buying trip in Europe. However, his business lived on, and it continued to bring innovation to retail trade. Today, the company serves customers with 191 Macy's stores. Those stores exist because of one man who refused to give up. More than anything else, what keeps a person going in the midst of adversity is having a sense of purpose. It is the fuel that powers persistence. The power of persistence. As you have no doubt guessed, the quality that took Macy through failure after failure was his persistence. That is the little difference that makes a big difference when it comes to failing forward. It separates those who achieve success from those who only dream about it. Nothing worth achieving comes easily. The only way to fail forward and achieve your dreams is to cultivate tenacity and persistence. These qualities can be learned, partly by developing the habit of following through on your commitments, especially when you don't feel like it. But to begin cultivating these qualities, you need a strategy. And that's what I want to give you now. A 4-point plan for approaching achievement that will encourage stamina and resilience in the face of failures. 1. Purpose. Find one. More than anything else, having a sense of purpose keeps a person going in the midst of adversity. It is the fuel that powers persistence. Business consultant Paul Stoltz did an extensive study on what it takes for individuals to persist through setbacks. According to Stoltz, the most important ingredient of persistence is this: identifying your mountain, your purpose in life, so that the work you do is meaningful. I run into people every day who are basically climbing the wrong mountain. People who have spent 20 years or more in their lives doing something that has no deep purpose for them. Suddenly, they look back and go, "What have I been doing?" Always bear in mind that your resolution to succeed is more important than any other thing. Abraham Lincoln. If you are a purpose-driven person naturally, then you probably already possess an innate sense of direction that helps you overcome adversity. But if you're not, then you may need some help. Use the following steps to help you discover and develop a desire. Get next to people who possess great desire. Develop discontent with the status quo. Search for a goal that excites you. Put your most vital possessions into that goal. Visualize yourself enjoying the rewards of that goal. If you follow this strategy, you may not immediately find your ultimate purpose, but you will at least start moving in that direction. And that's important. As Abraham Lincoln said, always bear in mind that your resolution to succeed is more important than any other thing. That resolution comes from a sense of purpose. 2. Excuses. Eliminate them. Effort only fully releases its reward when a person refuses to quit. Napoleon Hill. Agricultural scientist George Washington Carver noted, 99% of failures come from people who have the habit of making excuses. Having desire alone will not get you through your failures. You have to forget about making excuses and keep moving forward, as R.H. Macy did. Recently, I read a story about Dean Rhodes, a man who missed opportunity after opportunity, but he didn't make excuses for his shortcomings or whine about what might have been. He just kept going. Here's what I mean. Rhodes met Dave Thomas long after the restaurateur opened his first Wendy's. Rhodes admitted that he always knew the young Thomas would someday do something big, but when given the opportunity to invest in Wendy's, he didn't. Later, Rhodes met Colonel Sanders and had an opportunity to buy stock in his company before it went national. But he turned that down as well because he didn't agree with some of the Colonel's ideas. When Rhodes was in the restaurant equipment business, he often had equipment salesmen in his office trying to sell him on their machines. One of them was Ray Kroc. Rhodes admitted that Kroc was a pleasant person. However, he chose not to invest in a little hamburger stand called McDonald's. A few years later, on a cruise, he met an attorney from the Pacific Northwest who suggested that Rhodes invest in a son's new computer company. It had a funny name, Microsoft. Rhodes declined. Most people would pull their hair out and complain if they missed out on one of those opportunities, making excuses for why it didn't work out. Not Rhodes. He saw his mistakes for what they were and eventually focused on pursuing his own dreams and opportunities. Eventually, he saw his name at 289 on the Forbes list of the 400 most successful business owners in America. No matter how many opportunities you've missed or mistakes you've made, don't ever make excuses. Bite the bullet and take complete responsibility for yourself and just keep trying.